Being online, Chapter 1. Confusion, dislocation, and entanglements in the digital era. Keywords 500,000 years ago are light and darkness. Keywords 50 years ago are digital and analog. And keywords today are being online and being offline. Confusion between data and the internet. Over the past, neither major nor minor. That led me to contemplate seriously the internet, data, and computing. On May 12, 2013, the Hangzhou Mobile Talk Club organized a cloud computing themed salon at Yunqi Town in Hangzhou. The music platform Zombies founder Zhao and Hangzhou Wang spoke about the streaming music service Quality. Founder Wixing Chen spoke about product design in the era of cloud computing. And website Danku founder Jian Wang shared his experience of doing startups in the cloud era. These gentlemen could be considered the old guard of China's internet age. But they were early adopters of cloud computing. I too looked the opportunity to express my own views about what was going on. Generally speaking, after having been thrown into a tizzy for some time by rise of the mobile internet, everyone, including me, was considerably the position of the cloud with respect to the mobile internet. My reflections on big data and my bleak outlook on innovation coming from an app development and posted them on We Media under this provocative title. Jian Wang, you are totally wrong about cloud computing and big data. Drones are a classic application of big data. I love peace and think of when I speak about cloud computing and big data, both have to do with war. One example comes from a talk given by the author of The World is Flat. He went to the front lines of the war in Afghanistan and decided that West Point has to completely change the way it educates soldiers. He discovered that a low-ranking officer just needed a phone to command the movement. Of a fighter jet on the aircraft carrier. This could never have happened before in war. Previously, the ability of low-ranking officers to deploy war resources would have been extremely limited, but now they receive the same training as an army or division of commander would have in the past. People often ask, can I change the world with the help of right infrastructure? In the past, many major tasks could be carried out only by order of the president. But today, thanks to cloud computing, an individual can do many more things than the president. Another example is drones. Some people say big data in the world. Drones are a classic case of innovation. Wars could not have been fought like this before. But now, because of big data, everything has changed. Cloud computing helps you do things you could never do before at scales that would have been previously impossible. Our clients are the people who could best use data. When Allianz, Chinese believed that by using this market positioning, we were ahead of our time. In the early days, we were focused on data, not information. This is a very important distinction. And when we mentioned data, we viewed ourselves as platform. We believe that those best positioned to use data weren't us, but rather our clients using the cloud. Today, the most successful data company is Google. Google uses the web data available to everyone around the world, and they relied on their processing ability to create the world's largest business. During Google's early years, other companies had access to the same data as Google, but no one else had their processing ability or vision of data. When we were deciding how to position ourselves, we always maintained the basic concept that data is just data, but there are definitely people smarter than us who could turn data into an important business. The amount of data available today is far greater than before. Before, no one knew where the data was until Google launched search engine. This seems simple today, but back then it was a very difficult task because not many people have figured out how to run the data resource that they had on hand into a profitable business. Otherwise, Microsoft, Yahoo would not have outsourced their search engine services. Data is a misnomer because it doesn't reflect the essential nature of data. Actually, big data has existed for a long time. It's just that the word big didn't yet have any meaning. The world's biggest data has nothing to do with the internet. The European Nuclear Research Organization CERN's super collider possibly had the greatest amount of data, more data than would be possible to completely process in an entire lifetime. Data isn't meaningful simply because it's big. Today, data is meaningful when it goes online. This is the uniqueness of the internet. That evening can be online is far more reflective of the true nature of data. If the traffic data far more reflective of the true nature of data. If the traffic data that Kuwaiti used were not online, the app would be worthless. Taobao's data has value because it's online. Data on a tape or paper has very limited usefulness. In other words, the value of data becomes much greater and more obvious when it's online. And Pellet used to have to randomly call 2,000 people and have them take a survey in order to get accurate predictions. Now we do not have to do that. An analysis of people tweets accurately predict who will be elected president. Furthermore, Gallup's results have difficulty having an immediate impact on society. Data, however, can have a quick effect. Similarly, ride-hailing software, the data is online. Sometimes executives of petroleum and geological exploration companies talk to me about their big data, but I don't actually believe that what they're talking about is indeed big data. They do have a considerable amount of data, but if it's not online, then it's meaningless. Data is more important than feathers. I'm not a product expert. Anything that is wrong with alien product is entirely my fault. I hope everyone can forgive me for that. But after experiencing a lot of difficulties, I believe I've learned some things. So far, I have yet to see a product that integrates data very well. In the pre-internet era, a product selling point was its function. But now the most valuable thing about an internet product is data. There are many apps, but now the most valuable thing about an internet product is data. There are many apps that provide flight information, but the one I use most often is Trip. From a product perspective, I'm not sure how good it is, but its data is accurate and useful. It can tell you what happened to your incoming flight. For software in the past, features were far more important than data. But I believe that in the future, the opposite will be true. People in the internet industries understand this. I once joked with Jack Ma that we understood less about data than big box electronics retailer Sunning did about e-commerce. My point was that no one really knew where the opportunities were in this emerging industry. He's a game company, and he said that after making online games for years, he finally realized data was the most important thing. Running back and forth, copying data between computers is difficult and taxing. I would guess that he believes completely relying on intuition to make online games is not enough. Data can help him to do this better. Cloud computing is a business that based on trust. When I business that is about trust. Streaming music service Yamis and new media outlet Danku moved to Alien because of trust. China was the first country in the world to use paper money. Putting a stamp on a piece of paper and getting people to believe it was was an extremely bold proposition. But now we Chinese have fallen behind. We don't have the faith in credit cards and simply Chinese have fallen behind. We don't have the faith in credit cards and simply use them like debit cards. This is a huge problem. If someone says he wants to create an internet business that generates $20 billion in 3 years and he wants to rely entirely on someone else's cloud computing services, he can believe in the cloud. That is courage. I believe that without this type of, he can believe in the cloud. That is courage. I believe that without this type of courage, there can be no innovation. As of now, China has this type of opportunity. Insurance is a very traditional industry. If you open an insurance company, you will have to have a physical office. No one would say that you can take care of insurance business without signing a paper. Have an insurance company that is the first without an office. You only have to sign a piece of paper. Everything will be possible online. Making an app is like planting in someone else's garden. I think mobile internet innovation can go beyond just developing apps. Developing apps is kind of like planting in someone else's garden. Apple and Android have already set the fence, just like buying a potted plant at the supermarket. If you really want to make something robust, it will be very difficult. You'll need to go into the forest and clear your own land for something to thrive. Otherwise, if they want to take down your product, you have to take it down. This is a problem. Of course, some people believe the garden provides great environment, but in China there are many more revolutionary things we can do. Exactly what they are, we aren't certain of yet. There would be no Apple without Xerox. The greatest challenge we face in cloud computing is we still don't know exactly what cloud computing is. This is an emerging industry. We don't know exactly what cloud computing is. This is an emerging industry. We had only learned about it in books, and it took everyone's hard work and cooperation to make it a reality. I think there should be an internet museum. Today, everyone knows the internet, but they don't know its history, which makes it hard to innovate. Many people probably don't know that almost all mouses are sold in China, and much of the technology for their construction is also in China. Very rarely do people ask why is it called a mouse, and even fewer people know that the first mouse was made of wood. Today, everyone can see the beautiful iPhone, its operating system, and the excellent App Store, but most people don't know where this device came from. A documentary about the 1980s in the United States never been forced out of Apple, he would have realized his later accomplishments. If Jobs hadn't been pushed out, he wouldn't have gone on to found NEXT, which wouldn't have been bought by Apple. Therefore, we wouldn't have the Apple we have today. From this, we can see it's very hard to plan out the serendipity required for innovation. I do believe that Aliyun can succeed, but it will not do this so without going through tough times. There is a rumor on the internet that after Microsoft came out with Windows, Apple sued them for copying the Macintosh OS. Gates and Jobs eventually decided not to make a big deal of it, concluding that they both had stolen ideas from Xerox PARC. Xerox PARC didn't commercialize this technology well, but they made a major contribution. Without Xerox PARC, there would be no Apple. That is to say, startups all make products that might fail, which are nonetheless valuable. It is not about what data you have, it's about what service you provide. Today, sensors in a cell phone aren't very different from the sensors on a cruise missile. They can generate a lot of data, but it isn't all that valuable. Data collection is not a space full of innovation. If you can think it up, it's doable. The area with innovation potential is no one does the foundational work well now, then the later innovation will not come. People have been talking about location-based services for a while, but as of today, even though we know where users are, no one has developed good services around us. I think this is the greatest challenge moving forward. The ambiguity of cloud computing. Taking cloud computing as the present day equivalent of electricity in the industrial age data is like a Ford assembly line. Just as there is no way there could have been widespread industrialization without electricity, without cloud computing, we wouldn't have a big data. I believe there is ambiguity surrounding the term cloud computing. When we say cloud computing, we're really talking about computing in the cloud. Big data and storage in the cloud together. Considering only one data of Ford's assembly line, and forget about the cloud computing that makes it possible. For that reason, I distinguished between the visible front end and the invisible back end. I don't believe it when people say they can do big data without the cloud. Without the cloud, you're just a small workshop. Don't think about using data to improve data on their own because they lack the right computing infrastructure. They rely on IBM machines to process data. If you calculated the cost of processing data, you discover that the value produced by processing data cannot be canceled out by the cost of process itself. Data's great strength is that you can maximize its value with minimal cost. This isn't to say that any place that has data will definitely have a big data business. The best data services at Alibaba are in finance, but it isn't the same as banking. Alibaba Finance is doing microfinance, which just has a field that banks don't work in. Banks don't have this data, and carrying out a credit check is expensive, so they don't do microloans. Alibaba Finance gives out loans of a few hundred RMB, around $50, to countless people every day. There was a client who borrowed only 1 RMB, and he wrote a special letter of gratitude saying that no one had ever been willing to lend him 1 RMB in his entire life. And after Alibaba gave him the 1 RMB loan, he felt like he had been respected for the first time. Don't think about using data to improve existing services. That isn't what the data is meant for. It should be used to do things that couldn't be done before. Amazon does product recommendation better than anyone else in the world, but that's still the early days of big data. If Amazon is thinking only about how to use big data to further improve its recommendations every day, then I think later wrote in the lead in to the above article. That day, another WeMedia author tweeted out several of Jian Wang's quotes using a public WeChat account. It resulted in losing the most followers the author had ever lost in a day. and sparked considerable discussion about the account's followers. This is the impact of Jian Wang, Baba's most controversial leaders. His fans love him, but his detractors hate him. Even though I hadn't particularly prepared for this salon, the dramatic effect of my remarks was a big surprise for me. Dislocation of the cloud and computing. In January 2013, I was interviewed in depth by Jiaxi Li, a reporter from 2013. I was interviewed in depth by Jiaxi Li, a reporter from China Electronics News, a major IT media company. The conclusion I gave in that interview was that cloud computing was no longer a theory or a vision. It was a viable business. Jiaxi and I first met when I was still working at Microsoft Research Asia in Beijing. Later, after I'd moved back to Hangzhou to join Alibaba, she found out that I'd sparked controversy with my work launching and running Alibaba's cloud business and new OS, a mobile operating system. Some people said I was someone really passionate about technology who like R&D and business. In October 2013, the night before the Aliyun Developer Conference, she interviewed me regarding the cloud and computing. This interview was scheduled after a meeting Jian Wang had with an investment company, so it was pushed back to 10 o'clock in the evening. But despite his bloodshot eyes, Wang spoke with vigor and software R&D, the thinking about so-called internet thinking, a buzzword, singles, day sales, and an e-commerce sale day that occurs on November 11th, similar to Black Friday in the United States, and 12306, a train ticketing website in China which Aliyun helped to support. In the past, I have interviewed Wang in China, which Aliyun helped to support. In the past, I have interviewed Wang and shared his thoughts with other tech executives who have all found him to be very insightful. Currently, China IT industry undergoing a transition while the cloud and the internet are causing shocks to many industry sectors. There are many paths that the promotion. There are also considerable misunderstanding. I hope Wang's outlook will inspire others in China's IT industry as it undergoes this transition. Most companies are approaching the cloud in the wrong way. The cloud is currently divided into three types by the industry: private, public, and hybrid. IBM, Microsoft, VMware, and three types of cloud depending on their clients' needs. But Jian Wang believes that the private cloud isn't really the cloud at all. Cloud computing's essence is service. If you can't scale the computing resources and make them accessible to a large group and you can't really provide them as a service, then that isn't really something that can be called cloud computing. And for that reason, he believes IBM and the other traditional tech giants providing the private cloud have at most added some technology, sophistication, and some new features to their current product offerings without actually achieving a fundamental technology shift. Instead, packaging it and selling it as an upgraded IT solution. Wayne believes that the development of the cloud computing requires an ecosystem. But when several so-called cloud computing alliances sent him innovations, he turned them down. After reviewing these groups' members and their charters, he decided they were superficial and worthless and that they Microsoft mindset. Instead, Wang set up his own cloud computing alliance in Hangzhou called the Yunqi Alliance. Yunqi means where the cloud dwells. This alliance came about not because it had been Wang's idea all along, but rather because in the course of the Aliyun's operation, its users and developers encountered problems, and it became clear that there was a need for such an organization. So he had decided to bring together Aliyun's desperate developers, users, and partners to create a real platform where everyone could work together to solve their problem. During the course of several interviews, Wang expressed his concerns for the way China was pushing cloud computing. Everyone knows that cloud computing takes a service model, but when you really do it, you try to sell equipment to the users. This core business operation model hasn't been yet changed. Currently, China's many cloud computing service providers, including telecom companies and local governments, are all building massive data centers. They have thousands of servers, storage space, and networks, but 99% of them aren't really cloud computing. So Aliyun made Aspera, which is something akin to a cloud computing operating system. By cooperating with the data, Aspera can cloudify their computing services and turn them into a service that people inside and outside the companies can use. Wang says there are only 1.5 companies that Aliyun regards as its role models. Amazon truly realizes the service potential of the cloud. The other half companies company is Google, which has solved the problem of scaling up but hasn't completely done a good job with services discussed and the greatest source of concern, Wang says. In reality, the cloud is safer than traditional storage. It's like putting money in the bank or hiding it under your mattress. Which one is safer? Obviously, it's the bank. Using the clouds only required overcoming a psychological barrier. Only through every enterprise embracing the internet does the barrier. Only through every enterprise embracing the internet does the cloud have value. In many interviews, Wang has emphasized repeatedly that if the attitude of users and the ecosystem don't change to embrace the internet, the cloud will be meaningless. Only when the users and the whole ecosystem adopt the internet will the true value of the cloud become harder to deal with the spike of traffic of singles day. Online retailers need to decide how many services buy. This will cost them at least a few thousand RMB, not to mention the additional cost of in the future. Subsequently, when they come to Aliyun helps them use cloud storage services to handle single day for only a few RMB. I asked Wang, even if they were able to handle the massive volume of transactions on Singles Day, how could they possibly deal with the problem of train ticketing on the 12306 website during Chinese New Year? He said, if you compare the volume of actual transactions much bigger than 12306, and the conclusion is obvious. As Aliyun's list of clients continues to grow, someone once asked Wang when big finance clients like ICBC, one of the world's largest banks, would start using Aliyun. Wang answered, you should ask ICBC this question. If they believe they are an internet company, then by all means, they should use Aliyun services. At the very least, the vast majority of their non-core services could be put on the cloud. Now that sectors from finance and retail to manufacturing are facing the challenge of the internet, it is almost as if no industry is unaffected. When promoting the transition of traditional enterprise into internet enterprises, there are many options and models, but which will result in most successful transition to the internet-based companies? According to Wang, many people now view the internet merely as a channel for existing services and products rather than seeing it as a change in attitude and business models. Wang said, to be considered a true internet enterprise, the company has to have these two features. First, they're using the cloud computing. Second, they have to use data to optimize the services they provide through the cloud. Some people may believe Wang's opinions are too extreme, but I agree that his vision expresses a true understanding of how the internet is transforming business. If we don't experience a sea change in our core attitudes, we won't be able to increase efficiency and effectiveness. Only a great change can bring great results. Wang said, cloud is in essence using the internet. Most companies' IT and services rely on the internet, which is challenging traditional companies in ways they are unable to handle. If your company has nothing to do with the internet right now, it would be difficult to imagine it still being around in 10 years. The cloud is the opportunity for system software. Jian Wang believes that only with the cloud can China's IT industry transform itself. China's system software has never been able to take off because there has been no opportunity to interact with users, Wang said. You can't make a good product with a door closed. The development of a product is always take databases, for example. Databases weren't built in a day. They were developed over time through constant conversation with users and continuous growth. Now that traditional databases have turned into large-scale and matured market, we no longer have the opportunity to interact with users that allows us to grow together with them. And we are now facing insurmountable obstacles. I often said that demand is competitiveness, Wang said. China's cloud computing could someday overtake America's because China has more greater demand for it. He compared the situation to Bao, the number one growth because China has such a large market demand, whereas in the United States, Walmart was already well known and widespread. This is one of the reasons the development of e-commerce was more difficult in the United States at the beginning. Demand can tell you where the problems are. In Wang's opinion, competitiveness isn't solved as they are encountered, and this process cultivates competitiveness. That was the case when Aliyum was developing Aspera. the centerpiece of the Alien technology architecture. They ran into many problems and were frequently criticized. Wang said they were able to grow and succeed at Aliens only because they worked hard and addressed the problem. In his opinion, system software has a fresh opportunity today because of the cloud. We're now leaving the software era and entering the cloud computing era, which means the whole structure of the software system is undergoing a sea change. Development of software based on the cloud gives China another chance. But Wang looks at the companies that receive funding for projects related to core electronic components, high end chips, and software, and under the attitude of, I have what you have, in which companies compete to simply replace existing products that are already on the market, lacking viability in the marketplace. These will at best become vanity projects. Currently, Alibaba is promoting the DIOE process, which removing the reliance on IBM microcomputers, the Oracle database, and EMC storage, and involves moving from commercial software to open source and then eventually to proprietary tech plus cloud. Wang said that Chinese users' demand for the cloud is like dry kindling waiting for a match, and he hopes that not only system software but apps and the entire IT ecosystem will be able to more clearly see the opportunities inherent in the cloud and innovate based on the cloud and the internet, and as soon as possible revolutionize China's IT sector, which has always been playing catch up with other countries. In 2015, IBM shifted from the smart planet to cognitive computing and began talking about Watson and artificial intelligence initiative, and reported that IBM is considering selling its Watson business. Who knows where their focus will move in the future? Microsoft has already started to firmly embrace the cloud with the strategy of cloud first, while Google was still struggling to catch up. Silicon Valley is wondering whether investing large amounts of money in development is the best way to show America's innovative capacity. Obviously, people are looking for the best way forward. I thought at the time that my discussion with Jiashi Li wasn't well organized, but when the article appeared in China's electronic news, it came with the headline Alibaba CTO Wang Jian's outlook on the cloud and surprise. Entanglement of being offline and online. I often use Skype to make phone calls. One day I got frustrated because there are messages Skype can never send out. A friend told me if you're offline, my messages will never be sent out to you. It isn't that convenient to use. Indeed, the way Skype has configured its setting, if you send a message to me and I'm offline, it won't be received. If you send me something when I'm offline and then later you go offline, the message still won't go through until we're both online at the same time. A post on the social network site Duban.com, and online watching movies, complained about this issue with Skype. According to the site, it took two people a whole month for a message to be received due to this setting. Today, even after many rounds of improvements, the file transfer experience is still not across different versions of Skype due to the architecture and business. This example clearly demonstrates the offline mentality. In Skype's mind, you have an offline life that is separate from your online life. You'll only go on Skype to be online when you're off or home in front of your computer. If you're in the subway, out jogging, or eating, you'll be offline. Skype provides using the app, just as when you make a phone call. Both people need to be present for it to work, but this is viewing the internet like a telephone. I believe that if Skype can't overcome this binary view of the world as being offline and online, it won't survive the competition in the mobile internet era. Skype provides free internet phone calling services around the world, so you no longer need to be limited by telephone companies or national boundaries to make quality voice communications. When I downloaded Skype, I realized that the traditional telecommunications era was over, said Michael Powell, former chairman of the Federal Communications Commissions. He has seen the value of telecommunications, but he didn't necessarily see the future of the internet. Otherwise, there would be no WeChat today. Like Skype, Tencent's QQ messaging service is also stuck between the worlds of being offline and online. QQ is a national app in China. It was launched in 1999 and now is the most popular messaging app in the world. QQ introduced the term online to Chinese users and made it familiar. When you wanted to chat with people or send your coworker a document, you would have to click on the QQ icon on your desktop, log in with your username and password, and finally set your status as online. When you hear someone in a third or fourth tier city say, "Go on QQ," what they mean is go online. Being online has become another term for using the internet. At the beginning of 2011, WeChat was launched. Another Tencent messaging product. It is a free communication app that relies on smartphones and can be used across operating systems and various communication carriers. Unlike the smartphone version of QQ, WeChat has no eye-catching online setting. It was designed in belief that the users are online 24 hours a day. Only 433 days after its launch, WeChat had already garnered 1 million users as feat that responded first by just translating their PC-based product into a phone-based. Then, in the May of 2013 phone app update, they had learned from their WeChat colleagues, and not only did the design look more like WeChat, but more importantly, the online setting had disappeared. The tech media reacted strangely with headline off version of itself, expressing their dismay at the new update. But users were even more outraged. The update had been live for only 4 days, but 38,000 users in the App Store had already weighed in, with 90% of giving a negative review and some calling it a secondhand WeChat. Most users were upset with one change, the removal of the online setting. I believe the change that QQ made was necessary and not a simple matter of copy. The mobile internet has made the online setting quaint and a thing of the past. Only by removing that setting can the internet penetrate into every corner of its life. Always believe you're always online, but also that there is no single action that puts you online. Only when that's the case will the demands of the online society be. Ultimately, QQ will have to delete the offline functions, something it can't yet do only because of its users' habit, cultivated over the course of more than a decade. WeChat has no such problem because it over the course of more than a decade. WeChat has no such problem because it never had an offline setting. What QQ needs to overcome is not WeChat, but something much larger, the offline world. QQ eventually relented and in another so-called update restored the offline function. Today, users of QQ are still happy with this offline. Regarding being offline versus being online aren't simply a struggle within particular products. Rather, I see in such struggles a sign of the future. In the year 2015, there were many discussions in China about the future of the internet. More often than not, these discussions ignored important details that have a bearing on the future path. This again surprised me. There were many discussions in China about the future of the internet. More often than not, these discussions ignored important details that have a bearing on our future path. This again surprised me. These surprising things made me feel as though a new world was upon us. 400,000 years ago, Peking man was upon us. 400,000 years ago, Peking man was using fire, which gave humans warmth and light. With fire, a dark cave could become a bright place. The world was divided into darkness and light. Light was the root of survival, while darkness was the source of fear. In the 1980s, new discoveries in Africa showed that humans had been using fire much earlier than previously thought. Now it was known that humans had control of fire 1.42 million years ago. Light had driven out the darkness, so we were living in a world of brightness. Starting in the 1950s, digital technology arose and digital computers began replacing analog computers, with computers transforming the structure of society and its values. Today, every word we write is digital, as is every book we read and every picture we take. Digital has become part of the modern humanity's DNA. Digital has swallowed analog, and now it's clear we live in the digital age. Today, the internet continues to develop at high speed. Big data, cloud computing, and mobile internet, artificial intelligence, wearables, robots, virtual reality, the Internet of Things, blockchain, and many other new terms are appearing throughout various media outlets, forums, and expos. Every day of the internet era seems to give birth to a new technology innovation. Science and technology are like a wild horse, roaming free amid the concrete jungle. It is hard to tell the direction the horse is going in, but it affects everyone. In my opinion, in the background, there is an invisible and powerful hand in control. It's the term we're both familiar and unfamiliar with being online. This is the most important keyword of our era. Every day I meet new innovators as someone who's on the front line of technological advancement. Every day I meet new innovators as someone who's on the front lines of technological advancement. I think constantly about the origin of these developments, where they come from, and what is powering the change. Just understand the unwritten rules it follows. Being online is both common sense and yet also at the core of my way of thinking about the internet, which makes me want to discuss this oft ignored piece of common sense. Brash though this may seem, the nature of common sense is that it is true of the coming new world. Examining it, observing it, thinking about it will help eliminate the confusion in general. Every civilization inflection point has its own unique keywords, and today, the one we face is being online. The online world isn't a change from an old one. Rather, it is a new world. Isn't a change from an old one. Rather, it is a new world, an undiscovered continent. In the remainder of this book, I will use a new way of thinking approach the world we're living in today. This world that has been transformed from being offline to being online. I'll share with you my understanding and what I've learned about being online in the hope of this